In early March 2018, Nguyen visited his girlfriend Chamika at her boarding room, and the two spent time catching up and enjoying each other's company. Their time together turned intimate, and they ended up having sex twice. Later, Nguyen started feeling hungry and suggested they head out to grab some food. They hopped on Chamika's motorbike, picked up something to eat, and returned to her place. Back at the room, Chamika focused on her coursework, busy typing away on her laptop, while Nguyen took charge of preparing lunch. Once they finished eating, Nguyen couldn't resist and invited Chamika for another round of intimacy. Afterward, Chamika had to head to college, leaving Nguyen to relax in her room for the rest of the day. Hello, and welcome to our channel. Today, we're diving into another shocking and heartbreaking real-life story from around the world. This time, the story takes us to Kilanachi City, Sri Lanka. It's a deeply sad case about a young woman who was determined to focus on her studies and build a brighter future. But her journey was overshadowed by a toxic relationship with her controlling boyfriend. Despite giving him her all, his jealousy and mistrust consumed their relationship. Small misunderstandings often spiraled into massive arguments, leading to a tragic and horrifying turn of events. What exactly happened in this case? Stick with us as we unpack the story in more detail and explore how things escalated so terribly. Before we dive into the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And hey, share the story with your friends too. It's one worth talking about. Now let's jump in. This is the story of a young woman named Chamika. She grew up in Puthumuripu, a small village in the Mulluidavu district of Sri Lanka's northern province. Born in 1997, Chamika was the youngest of two siblings. Her older brother had moved out after getting married, leaving Chamika at home with her parents. Her father, Sandun, worked as a civil servant handling population records, but his job often sent him out of town, meaning Chamika spent most of her childhood with her mother. Chamika was known for her kind heart and warm smile. She was adored by everyone around her, relatives, friends, and neighbors alike. After finishing high school in 2016, Chamika left Puthumuripu to pursue her studies at a university in Kilanachi City. Academically gifted and hardworking, she consistently achieved high marks. But Chamika's personal life wasn't as smooth as her academic journey. Since her junior school days, she'd been in an on-again, off-again relationship with a boy named Nguyen, a senior who caught her attention early on. Their relationship was rocky at best. Nguyen had a temper, a pretentious attitude, and a blatant lack of respect for both women and elders. Despite this, Chamika couldn't seem to let go. She was drawn to his rebellious nature, perhaps finding excitement in the chaos he brought. No matter how badly Nguyen treated her, Chamika always forgave him, taking him back time and time again. Her mother, Kanchana, however, was not a fan. She saw right through Nguyen's charm, dismissing him as a troublemaker with no direction in life. His crude language and disrespectful behavior only fueled her dislike. So, when Chamika moved to Kilanachi to live with her grandmother, Kasun, while attending university, Kanchana felt a sense of relief. At least now, her daughter was in a stable environment, far from the influence of the aggressive and unpredictable Nguyen. But as you'll soon find out, some connections are hard to break, no matter how much they may need to be. Meanwhile, Chamika's mother's hopes for a peaceful life were completely misplaced. Nguyen, determined to be with Chamika, moved to Kilanachi City to chase after the girl of his dreams. Despite everything she had endured, Chamika continued to accept him. She even went as far as lying to her mother and maintaining a secret relationship with Nguyen, all while keeping her grandmother in the dark. She believed in giving him another chance, holding on to the hope that he could change. But Nguyen's controlling and possessive nature quickly reared its head again. He wanted to dominate every aspect of her life, and their relationship became increasingly toxic. Over time, Chamika began standing up for herself, pushing back whenever Nguyen's temper boiled over and he resorted to physical aggression. By September 2016, Chamika couldn't keep the secret any longer. She confessed to her parents about her relationship with Nguyen and the toxic dynamic they had been hiding. Her parents were horrified to learn not only about his violent tendencies but also about the threats he had made against Chamika and her family. They wasted no time reporting him to the authorities. Nguyen was arrested and charged for his abuse. He was sentenced to 5 months in prison, but even this wasn't enough to deter him. After serving just 4 months, he was released and immediately sought Chamika out. He showed up, full of apologies and tears, promising he had changed. He vowed to find steady work and said he wanted to marry her once she graduated college. Against all logic, and perhaps because of his sweet words, Chamika's heart softened once again. It's often said that women sometimes have a hard time letting go, especially when someone they deeply care about promises a fresh start. Despite the history of abuse, Chamika took him back. Nguyen, born on August 25, 1996, found a place to stay with a friend in the city and took up various jobs to make ends meet. When construction projects were available, he worked as a laborer. If work was slow, he parked vehicles near ATMs or took on whatever odd jobs came his way. He claimed he was saving every penny, determined to prove himself worthy of Chamika and ready to propose when she completed her studies. Nguyen's determination to work hard managed to win Chamika's heart once again. With a mix of carefully crafted excuses and little white lies, she eventually convinced her family to let her move out of her grandmother's house and live independently. By June 2017, Chamika had settled into a boarding room in a busy neighborhood in Kilinachi City. Her mother, Kanchana, and her grandmother helped her move, even going as far as collecting the landlord, Mr. Chithura's phone number, to ensure her safety. First, everything seemed fine. Chamika's new living arrangement was smooth, and her relationship with Nguyen appeared peaceful. Things were going so well that Chamika even confessed to her mother about reconciling with Nguyen. She painted a picture of a changed man, someone who had left his old ways behind, was now diligent at work, respectful, and even more devoted in his spiritual practices. In her words, he was someone to be proud of. But Kanchana, still wary of Nguyen's past behavior, wasn't sold. She reminded her daughter of all the pain and trouble he had caused before, urging her to end the relationship for good. Chamika, however, was defensive, brushing off her mother's concerns and even growing angry. Despite her reservations, Kanchana eventually decided to back off, letting her daughter learn from her own choices. However, she made it clear that Chamika should reach out if anything went wrong. By September 2017, according to Mr. Chithura, the landlord, Nguyen became a regular visitor at the boarding house. While overnight stays were technically prohibited, the landlord admitted he couldn't keep tabs on every tenant during the night since he went home to his wife after his daytime duties. This created an opportunity for Nguyen to bend the rules. As time went on, Kanchana's worst fears began to resurface. By early 2018, the cracks in Chamika and Nguyen's relationship became glaring. Their once peaceful romance spiraled into arguments fueled by jealousy, possessiveness, and an unhealthy need for control. The fights escalated, often turning into shouting matches and, at times, physical altercations. Chamika, perhaps embarrassed by how much she had vouched for Nguyen's change, chose not to tell her family about what was happening. She endured the toxic cycle in silence, only pushing back whenever Nguyen raised his hand against her. The landlord, Mr. Chithura, later revealed that other tenants often complained about the noise coming from Chamika's room. There were loud arguments, crashing sounds, and occasional shouting. Once, Kanchana tried to intervene by calling her daughter directly after hearing rumors. However, Chamika brushed off her mother's concerns, claiming the noise was just dishes falling or the TV being turned up too loud. Her reassurances gave Kanchana some peace of mind, but deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that her daughter was hiding the truth. Unfortunately, the reality of Chamika's situation was far worse than anyone could have imagined. By early March 2018, Nguyen paid a visit to Chamika at her boarding room. They spent time catching up, reconnecting, and ended up being intimate twice. Later, Nguyen felt hungry, so they hopped on Chamika's motorbike to grab some food. Back at the room, Chamika got busy with her coursework on her laptop, while Nguyen prepared lunch. After eating, Nguyen invited Chamika for another round of intimacy before she left for her college classes, leaving him alone in her room. As the hours passed, Nguyen grew restless and bored. When Chamika returned from campus that afternoon, he suggested they go for a walk. But just as they were about to head out, Chamika's phone buzzed with a WhatsApp message. Nguyen, feeling nosy, grabbed her phone to check the message. It was from one of her college friends, a guy, inviting her to work on a group assignment due the next day. This message sent Nguyen into a rage. He couldn't understand why she needed to leave again after spending all day at college. To him, the idea of a group study in the evening, especially at a male classmate's boarding room, seemed suspicious. Accusations started flying as he jumped to conclusions, convinced that there was something more going on. Chamika tried to reason with him, explaining that the assignment was too complex to handle alone and the deadline was looming. But Nguyen wasn't having it. He grabbed her phone and replied to her friend's message, saying she wouldn't be attending. This infuriated Chamika, who stood her ground and argued back, asserting her independence. The argument quickly escalated, with Nguyen losing his temper and resorting to physical aggression. Chamika fought back, but the situation spiraled out of control. In a fit of rage, Nguyen grabbed a blanket and attacked Chamika, unintentionally taking her life in the process. Realizing what had happened, Nguyen panicked. Overcome with shock and fear, he placed Chamika's lifeless body on the bed, deactivated her phone, locked the boarding room door, and fled to his hometown of Puthumuripu. Meanwhile, Chamika's absence did not go unnoticed. One of her closest friends, Nadika, grew concerned when she couldn't reach her via WhatsApp or calls. Worried, Nadika went to Chamika's boarding room around 8 p.m. that same evening. Finding the door locked and no signs of Chamika, she assumed her friend was out and left. The next day, Nadika returned to check on her friend around 11 a.m. She noticed Chamika's motorbike still parked in the same spot as the previous night, untouched. Again, she knocked on the door, but there was no response. Feeling uneasy, Nadika left once more, sensing that something wasn't right but unsure of what to do. 2 days after the incident, Chamika's mother, Kanchana, grew increasingly worried. Chamika always made it a habit to inform her mother when she got home from college, but this time there had been no calls or messages. Concerned, Kanchana reached out to the landlord, Mr. Chithura, who said the room was locked and assumed Chamika was at college. Since there were many tenants, he hadn't noticed that her motorbike was still parked in the same spot. Feeling uneasy, Kanchana sent a WhatsApp message to one of Chamika's college friends, Janaka, asking if he had seen her. Janaka revealed that Chamika hadn't shown up for classes in 2 days, which alarmed both of them. He promised to check on her at her boarding house. A few days later, at around 10 a.m., Janaka, along with 2 friends, Lakshan and Janani, went to Chamika's boarding room. They knocked repeatedly, but there was no answer. Then, they noticed a key partially visible through the gap in the window. Using the key, they unlocked the door and opened it slightly, only to be hit by a strong, unpleasant odor. Nervously stepping inside, they discovered Chamika's lifeless body. Panicked, they immediately reported it to Mr. Chithura, who contacted the police. Authorities arrived and transferred Chamika's body to Kilinachi City General Hospital for an autopsy. The investigation moved quickly. Police found that Chamika had died from blunt force trauma to the head and suffocation. Interviews with other tenants revealed that the last person seen with her was her boyfriend, Nguyen. Working with Chamika's friends, the police set a trap, using WhatsApp to lure Nguyen to the campus under the pretense of an important discussion. Within just 4 hours of discovering Chamika's body, Nguyen fell for the trap, was apprehended, and confessed to everything without resistance. Nguyen admitted to the crime, expressing regret. He claimed he deeply loved Chamika but struggled with uncontrollable jealousy and anger. His insecurities stemmed from his unstable situation, no permanent job and no clear prospects. While Chamika was beautiful, intelligent, and surrounded by accomplished, wealthy friends, he constantly feared losing her. Seeing her interact with male friends or getting WhatsApp messages from them would ignite his possessiveness, clouding his judgment and pushing him to violent outbursts. Nguyen confessed that his actions were driven by his own feelings of inadequacy, but the damage had already been done. Chamika's tragic death served as a heartbreaking reminder of how unchecked emotions and toxic behavior could spiral out of control. Chamika's mother, Kanchana, also gave testimony at the Kilinachi Municipal Court, expressing her long-standing dislike for her daughter's boyfriend, Nguyen. She described him as unkempt, rarely bathing, and having a generally unpleasant appearance. But it wasn't just his looks. Kanchana shared that Nguyen had a foul mouth, often spoke inappropriately, and had even yelled at Chamika early in their relationship. His history as a repeat offender only solidified her belief that it would be nearly impossible for him to change. She further explained that his behavior hadn't improved over time. Nguyen's work was inconsistent at best, and much of his time was spent lingering around Chamika's boarding house, waiting for her to return from college. He frequently stayed over, and it was widely known that he engaged in inappropriate activities with Chamika in her room. To Kanchana, there was no evidence of growth or change in his character. In mid-August 2018, during the final verdict, the judge read out the charges against Nguyen for committing violent acts that led to the loss of life. The young man from Puthumuripa village was sentenced to 12 years in prison and fined 10 million Sri Lankan rupees. This decision aligned with the prosecution's original request. Although Nguyen's lawyer encouraged him to appeal the sentence, arguing that it might be reduced, Nguyen declined. Instead, he accepted the punishment, stating that he was ready to take full responsibility for his actions. It was a rare moment of accountability, but tragically, it came far too late to make amends for the devastating loss of Chamika's life. What lessons can we take from this story?